Guys, my name is Nonima Tikela. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I want us to talk about Brigadier Bongani Gininda's evidence against Danzi. Let's look at things, allegations, and everything that Uramsipile needs to pay attention to, especially the things that were said by Brigadier Gininda. These are some of the things that he needs to make sure he asks questions. Undanzi gives answers, honest answers when it comes to all of these things. So we all know that this case does not fall apart from outside. Ne? It's not falling apart because of all the noise that us, the YouTubers, Abondaba, SBU Judge Ratamukhatling will call us busy out here. No, it fractures because of contradictions inside that courtroom. In the sense of Meyiwa murder trial, the state led by Brigadier Bongani Gininda presents a story that appears coherent when you first listen to it. But in law, coherence is not proof most right, and consistency is not immunity from scrutiny. So what we do out here is to scrutinize everything, and we have every right to do so. So we are not breaking any laws. We are just scrutinizing because we want to see what's going on. So today, we do not argue innocence or guilty. We separate what holds under pressure from what begins to crack when tested by evidence. Because, my goodness, for Ndanzi, what breaks? For the state, what breaks? That's what we are trying to see here. So let's first check what holds when Ukininda is trying to convince us about his so-called narrative of a hit. Okay, let's begin with the so-called alibi of Ndanzi, which apparently was false. Let's begin with the strongest pillar of the state case, right? This is not opinion, this is documentation in that courtroom of Judge Rata. So, employment record from Sibanye Gold independently placed Bongani Ndanzi away from work on the day of the murder, directly contradicting his alibi. Well, when it comes to that, I suppose Bongani Ndanzi, when he was first asked about it, he got shocked. He did not really remember where he was, which is normal, of course. So he already said it. There's no taking it back when he sits and be like, okay, let me think. What was happening that day? Now, he already said it to the police that, no, man, I was at work, because normally he's at work. Remember? So, of course, I understand when Bongani Ndanzi comes from. I don't know about you, but I understand. His initial reaction will be like, I was at work. But when he sees the reality of what is happening, he sits down and thinks about things thoroughly, and he remembers, no, man, that's not it. Bengse KZN. I remember now. But in the heat of the moment, when Babem Kaklamisa, yeah, you are under arrest, of course he's going to say, actually, yeah, but whatever happened. So I understand why his alibi would be the workplace. Then the next thing, the employment brings something else, etc. Other things about what he gave evidence about regarding his alibi. This evidence it does not rely on police testimony most, right? It does not rely on confessions. It does not rely on anybody but the records of employment. Has not been convincingly rebutted because there is nothing to rebut to begin with. So in law, if a false alibi is a powerful circumstantial evidence, it suggests consciousness of guilt. But in this case, I understand why Bongani said he was at work. But again, when it comes to the state, on this point of this alibi that fell apart, the state stands on solid ground. That's what it looks like. Okay, sharp. Let's move. Now, the second thing. So before we go to a second thing, that is what Uramsipile needs to deal with first. The alibi story, Sika Bongani Ndanzi, and says, you've been coming to court, blah. I don't know how he's going to put it, but you had time to sit down and think about it. Tell me, where were you on the 26th of October? He needs to now remember, because he's no longer under pressure in that way he was. He is still under pressure, yes, but now he had time to recollect his memory. So I think this is something that uRamsipilwe needs to deal with. Now, going to the second point, there is a link to accused or to co-accused and the intruder theory. That is the second thing that uRamsipilwe needs to deal with. I spoke about other things in previous videos, but now the focus is in these ones that I'm mentioning here in this video. So there's the intruder story, there is the link to the co-accused, and also there is what you call the sketch that was made, the O-shaped beard, everything, Jay. Those are the other focus points, Zika, that I feel that Advocate Ramsipilwe needs to deal with. Photographs linking Ntanzi to co-accused, including Mthobisi Mncube. According to the state case, they were placed in that courtroom. We can't see them, so we can't really actually say anything about them because we don't have that access to see those things. Cell phone data shows coordination patterns consisting with planning, not coincidence. Fine. Those are the things that Ukininda is claiming. But that cell phone data also somewhere breaks because it does not take accused number 3, Mthobisi Mncube, who supposedly went inside with uBongani Ntanzi to the house. But that time that he's supposed to be at Vosloorus, he was in Johannesburg. Okay? So his cell phone data says something else, which is very important. More importantly, can go for the state because they are trying to feed us a certain situation. They claim that there was no gunshot residue was found on the house occupants. They did not take it, was right. Forensic exclusion weakened the inside job narrative. Ne? Because if you don't take the residue from the people and then you are saying whatever, we expected uZandi to have some of it. We expected some of them to have some of it because there was a bullet that tried to shoot on uZandi, right? So, yeah. Now, what emerges instead is an externally hit scenario instead of real things that were needed. This evidence does not depend on disputed confessions. It stands on data according to Gininda, right? Proximity and forensic logic. That is what Gininda is trying to sell. But wait, is it landing correctly? Is it making any justice for the state case? In my view, no, it isn't. It isn't. The third thing that they painted Ntanzi with, the gun supplier allegation. Now we enter more complex terrain here because we are still waiting. How did Ntanzi become a gun supplier? For I choose number 5, I choose number 3, I choose number 4. Nah, doesn't make sense. Now, a so-called deceased informant alleges that Ntanzi was involved in weapon supply and other violent crimes. That is Buthelezi, the one that they said the accused number 3 was like Buthelezi Bekulu. Buthelezi could not have said these things. Buthelezi was mentally not okay. He was removed from prison because he was not okay mentally. So, no ways. Absolutely no ways. Yes. And then Gininda testifies that these claims were cross-checked against existing dockets. He claimed that Ntanzi had plus minus 30 cases. Lutho Kesana, we are still waiting for them. These are the things that Ramsipilwe needs to check on. What happened to the gun supply allegation? Are you a gun supplier? What's going on with that? Where are the 30 cases? Jay, those are the things that he needs to touch on. But Ukininda, guys, Ukininda will frustrate you there. And every time you think about him, you like, hell no, but this man can talk. This man can talk. Ukininda testified that these claims were cross-checked, right? Yes, parts of this are hearsay, but hearsay that fits the forensic gaps, according to Gininda. No valuables were stolen, execution style shooting, killing inconsistent with robbery. The allegation is vulnerable, but it is not irrational. But now, iproof. Okay, The fourth thing that Ramza must deal with, the plea bargain offer. Lastly, the plea offer. Gininda's testimony here is internally consistent and supported by so-called procedural record, but there is no signed offer. There is no signed plea offer, Kesan. If it's true, it suggests initial willingness to cooperate from Tanzi's side. That alone does not prove any guilt, but it adds context to the state narrative, okay? But wait, plea bargain paperwork, bring it so that you can show us. It started. Plea bargain paperwork. Now, let's deal with the fault lines. Let's deal with the fault lines. Firstly, confessions. This is where the state's case weakens significantly. Danzi alleges assault, suffocation, and coercion across multiple locations. Yes, his timeline shifts. Yes, inconsistencies exist. But here is the problem. A recorded confession was ruled inadmissible due to procedural failures. In law, once voluntariness is compromised, everything built on it becomes unstable. And the absence of medical record does not conclusively disprove torture, right? Especially in custodial environments. A case claiming strong independent corroboration should not lean this heavily on disputed confessions. So, I said to Ntanzi, what else do they have? If they forced me to do all of this, what else do they have? Should this fall apart? Number two, the Zungu affidavit, a direct collision. This is not a minor inconsistency. It is a direct clash of sworn versions. Gininda testified that Absalom Zungu implicated Ntanzi. Absalom Zungu later files an affidavit stating he never made such a statement. He goes further, alleging pressure to falsify, to implicate the accused. This is not a confusion, okay? This is a counter affidavit. And it strikes as an origin of the investigation itself. And now the person that was supposed to be the originator of the investigation is like, ningali ningibhedele. Ningangijwayeli kabi mina, angazani nalutho. Thirdly, investigative gaps and misconduct allegations. Let's add to this. Arrest date discrepancies, firearm inconsistencies, delayed dockets, broken chains of evidence. Individually, these are weaknesses. Together, they form a pattern of investigative fragility. This does not align with the image of a clean, linear investigation. So, yabona ke yonke leyo nto imosha icase kaGininda nje altogether ivele imoshe kube kubi ke for uGininda. Point number 4, over-reliance on confessions. Strip away the confessions and what remains? No direct forensic link placing Ntanzi at the scene. Key witnesses vulnerable to hearsay challenges. Evidence exposed to a Section 174 discharge application. This is not some speculation, guys. It is procedural reality. And that is where all of this comes. That is why Gininda's case becomes very questionable. It is very questionable. Now, where the trial truly stands, what we are witnessing is not a collapse, but a split case scenario. Parts of the state's case are strong because they are forcing the matter, logical and evidential sound. Other parts are brittle, disputed, and legally exposed. And that is where uRamsipile needs to hit the nail, because they have these things. Zokuti uBongani lied about his whereabouts. That's why I'm saying there are parts that are strong that may ruin Ntanzi. And also, if Judge Ratha takes in the confessions, that also is strong, that may ruin Ntanzi, could ruin the accused opportunities to walk free. Also, but other parts are brittle, disputed, and legally exposed. That's what Ramsipile needs to focus on. The outcome now rests with Judge Rata Mokgoatlheng, not on outrage, not on public opinion, but on admissibility, credibility, and weight. Is this whole case enough to find the accused guilty, or even Ntanzi alone? If the fractured elements fall away, the defense gains ground, right? If they survive, the circumstantial case may still stand. So that is what Advocate Ramsipile needs to deal with. The circumstantial case must never stand. This trial will not be decided by volume. It will be decided what survives the law. And that is what Ramsipile must fight with. What are your thoughts when it comes to this? Let's talk in the comment section. I want to hear your views. Thank you so much. I will see you on our next video. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.